So you want to know everything there is to know about living in Kissimmee, Florida. Well, in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into where is Kissimmee, everything you need to know about it, from cost of living, the schools, what are the top communities that people live in and look for inside of Kissimmee. What's it like with the insane amount of vacationers that come every single year and the snowbirds to Orlando, Florida? What's it like? Should you live there? And everything in between. So we're going to get after it right now. Okay, so getting straight into it, the first thing we're going to cover about is everything there is just Kissimmee in general. So if you don't know, and maybe you just stumbled upon this, Kissimmee is located south to southwest of downtown Orlando. So it's located right on Lake Toho. Obviously it's not the full name, but everyone locally, I've just always heard it called as Lake Toho. And it is also considered the vacation capital of the world. I think that's a little big, maybe of a stretch, but it's definitely, when it comes to Orlando, if you've come here maybe to Disney or any of the other theme parks, maybe just to visit, you've probably looked at a residence in Kissimmee that you are looking to rent during your stay here. Kissimmee, there are many communities that allow short-term rentals. It's not that it's the easiest thing to do. Most of those people have to get permits in order to do so, but Kissimmee always has been very friendly when it comes to short-term rentals in that. So a lot of people know it as the vacation rental stronghold here in Orlando, and I can tell you that is completely true. But Kissimmee has a lot going for it. It's obviously one of the biggest cities inside Osceola County. So if you're looking at living inside the county, obviously Orlando's made up of several of them. Kissimmee is one of those where it is the largest for that county. And right off the I-4, Kissimmee is only located about 31 minutes during like decent traffic to the airport, and only about the same distance to Disney World. Actually, it's probably a little bit less, to be honest with you. The great thing about Kissimmee is if you're located in main Kissimmee, you're really only one toll road to Disney World. It only costs about $2.18 each way during peak time. So for a lot of people who live in Kissimmee, if you like going to Disney World and maybe you like having cheaper homes in the video, like say we just did in Celebration, then this is definitely a place for you. Now, some people, when they look at Kissimmee, they will consider Celebration as part of that because it is right next to it when you're heading west on the 4. And to be honest with you, it is true, but Kissimmee itself, in my opinion, is completely separate than Celebration. Celebration is its own thing. That's why we did a video on it. And when it comes to Kissimmee, it has its own peak to it, but it's also not much farther than Celebration, if not the same, depending on what part of Kissimmee you live in, to Disney World. So it is a blessing. And also, the average cost, which we will get into next, is a lot lower than, say, Celebration. So for those of you who maybe don't have Celebration budget, like most of us, then this could be a great community for you to be in. But Kissimmee, overall, great community. There's always pros and cons, which we're going to get into as we go through each single section, but you know, it is one of those communities that everyone looks at. It's definitely one of the top searched areas when it comes to Orlando, especially for those of you who are relocating, and we'll get into the cost of living right now. Okay, the cost of living in Kissimmee. Now, Kissimmee is not going to be the cheapest area, especially when you look at, say, the center of Orlando and you draw an hour to an hour and a half around Orlando. Kissimmee is not going to be one of the cheapest areas by far, and this is definitely not what I'm going to get into. So if you're looking for like the most affordable area, Kissimmee might not be it, but at the same time, you can find little pockets of affordability inside Kissimmee. So the first thing we're getting into is those of you who are moving to purchase inside Kissimmee. So my big factors when it comes to doing this is I'm not going into each specific neighborhood, because when it comes to purchasing a home inside Kissimmee, it varies. Obviously, depending on what neighborhood, which we're going to get into some of the top ones that I've heard people ask about when it comes to moving to that area around Kissimmee. What type of property? There's so much that goes into it. And there's situations like depending if you can get a better deal with the seller, and there's all these crazy things that I'm not going to dive into, but you can always reach out to us. But when it comes down to the cost of living, if you're looking for a single family home, say 3-bed, 2-bath with a 2-car garage, you're looking at around $400,000 is the most affordable, decent move-in home I found at the time of recording this video inside Kissimmee. So you can take one search, or obviously in the description down below, where you can search for those homes, but obviously it varies wildly. Now for townhomes, the most affordable I could find, and now obviously a townhome is not a condo, okay? Townhome is there's probably gonna be a garage, and it's its own standalone unit. It's not stacked on top of each other. Those are condos, right? Wildly different. Not what I'm talking about. But for townhomes, you're looking at about $360,000 for the equivalent 3-bed, 2-bath townhome, which surprisingly, because of HOA cost, you're probably gonna be spending the same, sometimes more than that 400,000 single family home. Overall, it's not the most Osceola is not the most affordable county when it comes to the areas around Davenport. So that cost is also gonna play into it, depending on your home, the taxes. Some of these communities, especially if there are a lot of the newer builds, which there's so much new construction going on in the area, there are a lot of not only HOA costs, but also CDD costs, which is where they build a new community, you are covering the infrastructure of increasing that community. So keep that in mind when it comes to purchasing a home inside Kissimmee and the cost of living that's going to be associated with that. So when it comes to renting, offer the same criteria: 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, around 2,000 square feet, the equivalent version of a townhome, at least not in terms of square footage, but in terms of bedroom, bathroom, and garage. Single family homes averaged around $2,000 a month starting for single family. For townhomes, roughly around $1,850. Now, when it comes to renting, people are always reaching out and saying, Cameron, where can I find the best rentals? Look, landlords around the area, apartments.com is a big one. Obviously Zillow, be wary of Craigslist. Florida is definitely a home to many, many scams around the Orlando area. So be very, very wary when it comes to looking for rentals. If you see a deal that sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Sometimes you can find rents that are cheaper than these. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different areas that go into the area. I'm not talking about apartments or none of that. This is just if you want your own individual place, not a condo or an apartment unit. But that's the rough rent when it comes to starting in Kissimmee. Now, obviously, this is tied down to this tight area around Kissimmee. I'm sure a lot of people in the comments below, you can always let me know, but they might look just a little bit outside Kissimmee, not talking about those areas. It varies wildly around the Orlando area. But it also comes down to your cost of are you willing to take toll roads? Are you not willing to take toll roads? All of that really factors in when it comes to living here. So imagine when it comes to cost of living, Kissimmee is a touristy area. So sometimes you probably might be paying a little bit more than you might in, say, Polk County or like a Davenport, because a lot of the stores are servicing those vacationers. So we all know that means during peak seasons, it might mean a little extra cost, or at the very least, you're probably not gonna find the deals that you're used to the rest of the year. So I tell people to keep in mind when it comes to living in Kissimmee, that cost might play into you, especially maybe a little bit higher property taxes. If it's a newer community, yes, a lot of the new construction communities that we work with help a lot when it comes to rate buy downs and closing costs. And so your short-term costs are a lot cheaper, and we're able to help you facilitate that. But keep in mind, you also probably gonna have higher monthly costs for a while because they have those extra infrastructure costs tacked onto new construction. So it's a giant conglomerate of issues and problems. So if you are looking to move and relocate the area, cost of living is a concern, you're looking to purchase, you're looking to make that home decision, make sure you get the right neighborhood in the right area, which don't forget we were about to get into. But this number coming up down below is how you can get a hold of me. You can call, text, email, does not matter. I'm here to help you. I've had so many conversations, especially being into this new year, every single day and week with people who are relocating to the area, and I love it. I've been in the military, I've relocated probably more than I've ever wanted to, and I can tell you if you are looking to relocate to the area, it's what we do, is relocation. And even when you get here, you're probably gonna wanna move again. It happens to all of us. But making sure you get that plan done the right way to get you from A to Z is what we do best with me and my team. So reach out to us, let's have a conversation, and let's get to the next topic. Okay, next is the top communities that I hear people talk about when it comes to looking to move to Kissimmee. So the number one, I'm gonna save for the very last. I'm gonna give you the top three that I've heard people bring up in the last year when it comes to living in Kissimmee. All three are decent contenders. Overall, there are a lot of good other communities, especially new construction ones that are coming on this mark. But these three just seem to come up more often than not with a lot of people. And the last one I'm gonna give you is the one I hear about constantly. The first one, just heading east outside the center of Kissimmee, is Buenaventura Lakes. Now, obviously, some of these communities, keep in mind it might not be the dead center of Kissimmee, but I hear them brought up a lot. Now, this one, maybe sometimes you can find, probably in terms of the general Kissimmee area, maybe sometimes you can find some affordability in relative to Kissimmee in this area. Communities tend to be decent. It's obviously not maybe as best as some of the other ones coming up on the list, but it's one of those areas that people really sought out highly in Kissimmee. Now, there are a lot of short-term rentals in this. So keep in mind, while these might be top communities, none of these are immune to the fact that there's obviously a lot of short-term rentals coming through. Now, there are communities inside Kissimmee that will try to avoid that, rules against that. But keep in mind, not everyone listens to rules. So you might still be susceptible to those problems. But Buenaventura Lakes is one of the ones that people bring up to a lot. And also, it's not too crazy out there, right? So you can still easily get on the highways, head to Disney World. Obviously, it's heading east a little bit compared to the center of Kissimmee, so getting to the airport might not be too bad. So relatively, you might be a little bit better off depending on what direction you're trying to go. Again, it really comes down to where you're trying to drive every single day for this one. The second community is Bella Lago. So if you're looking at the center of Kissimmee, this is heading south. So one downfall of this community, you're obviously gonna be farther heading towards Point Siena, and it's gonna be just that much farther to go to the airport, to go to Disney World. So keep that in mind compared to the other ones. Even though this is number 2 on our list, it comes with its drawbacks, and that is, honestly, it's the location where it is. Now, that might not be an issue for you, but keep in mind that may be a downfall for some of you. Now, Bella Lago is a gated community. It has a lot of things inside of it. Obviously, like access to Lake Toho. It has a fitness center, among other many community amenities. And ranges here in terms of affordability, you see homes right now for under 400,000, and you see some that are $1 million. It varies wildly. But this is obviously another community that has come up a lot from people who are relocating here, because they look into it and they're like, Cameron, I really want a gated community. I want a community that, even though it's a little bit out of the way, they just like the look and feel of it. Because a lot of us moving to Florida, and especially Orlando, they want to feel kind of at peace when they go to their home, or they want communities that have a lot to offer. And keep in mind, a lot of the new construction communities, they might not have a lot to offer. You might get one pool, I call it the cookie cutter. 2 types of homes, if you're lucky 3, with maybe some minor customization. You get 1 park and 1 pool. And if it's a big enough community, they might double it. But overall, it's cookie cutter. It's basic, it's simple. A lot of the other gated communities like Bella Lago, and a little bit more, I'd say, established. You end up getting a lot more community offer, right? Obviously, you're right there on the lake access. You know, the clubhouse can be a big thing to some people. There's a charter school. There's a lot of things inside of the community that people tend to find, really, they love it. But keep in mind, the gated community might be annoying to you. I mean, having to go through a gate, obviously being in the military, going through gates to get back home can be annoying, right? Obviously, it's not like the military, but you know what I'm getting to. It might not be for you. So keep that in mind when it comes to living in the area. But a lot of people complain about the, the craziest touristy aspect of Kissimmee. Well, communities like this that are a little bit south, they kind of can help you be immune to it. Because keep in mind, Kissimmee it covers a wide area. So even though it might seem like you're heading towards Point Siena, with this community, you're technically still in the Kissimmee city area. Like if you're paying money for an HOA and CDD and stuff, and you want to get like a good bang for your buck for it, this is one of the communities that you probably need to have on your list, especially if you're relocating to the Kissimmee area. At the very least, take a look at it, right? Or you reach out to us and we can get you in, we can take a look at it. Because honestly, it is one of those top communities. This might even be your number 1. But speaking of number 1, we're gonna get in and cover the number 1 community right now. Okay, and the number 1 community, which I put as top of the list, that I literally think, I think every single month someone calls or reaches out to us and they bring up this community, and that's Hunters Creek. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a specific community per se. So unlike Bella Lago, which was a specific city, right? Not a city, a community, sorry, a community, Hunters Creek is like a general area just outside the city center of Kissimmee. And if you talk to locals enough, you understand that while the price point tends to be a little bit higher, again, you can still find things that might be more in your budget inside the area. But literally, no matter what store you're looking for, it's got it, right? Like it's got all the major chains. It's right next to the city center. You're not destroying any distance when it comes to Disney World or the airport. Like you're there. Like you are in the action of the area. Now, that can come as a drawback because that also means you might have to deal with some tourists, but the safety tends to be very high. When you look up some of the school information for the area, which we'll get into shortly, obviously it tends to rank some of the highest. Like there's for good reason. I mean, I even had someone who reached out to us who was like, hey, I'm looking to move to the area. We're moving this weekend. Is this a good area? And I'm like, well, you kind of found one of like the best ones that people tend to look at. When you're looking at moving to the Kissimmee area, Hunters Creek always ends up coming up as one of the top areas. For good reason. Like if you look at any of the top stats, when you compare all the different areas of Kissimmee, it tends to rank up there. Now, keep in mind, you might disagree with the 3 that I gave you. And if you do, why don't you help someone out? Comment down below what other area of Kissimmee you think is best. Or maybe you don't, and maybe you think there's a different part of Orlando that you think people should look at when it comes to moving to Kissimmee. Let us know in the comments below. Let me know. I really don't mind. When it comes to living here, we all have different opinions of what's good areas, what's bad areas, and you need to let people know down below if you have that information. Don't hold it, come on, don't be a Scrooge. Get that information, let it up, let everyone know down in the comments below, or if there's a different community you want to know more about, let me know in the comments. Now we're gonna talk about the schools when it comes to living in Kissimmee. So, schools when it comes to the greater Orlando area, because it's not just specific to Kissimmee, and we'll get into some of the specifics in a little bit, but when it comes to, generally speaking, just the schools in the area, all around Orlando, it's very, very varied. Like, you have charter schools, public schools, private schools. A lot of us, especially, you know, we with our kids, like, we homeschool. It's a giant homeschool community all throughout Orlando. And that means you have a lot of school options when it comes to every micro area. So we're just gonna specifically talk about just like charter and public schools, because that's information that you can search on our website, which is down below. So anything I'm talking about schools, do not take my word for it. Down below, I created a website. If you go to the resources tab, you'll be able to go into some general websites. You'll be able to go to the state website for Florida education. You'll also be able to go to a third-party website that is non-biased, that just gives you general school ratings and information based on test scores, safety, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to schools in Kissimmee specifically, generally I think most of the ratings I saw that were public and charter, they tend to be C, maybe B average on best. Right? So maybe not the most stellar schools in the area. Now, I didn't really look deeply into charter schools or private schools too heavily, so you might still be able to find some decent schooling. Keep in mind, you might be able to drive your kids if you go into a private school a little bit farther out. Now, another thing for those of you who are looking to homeschool kids, or maybe it's an option, because obviously there's a lot of online schools that are funded in Florida, is obviously what are the communities like when your kids aren't in those schools if they're not going to standard school? Well, I can tell you there's a massive homeschooling communities throughout Orlando. We're a part of several. We've done Disney World meetups. We've had, you know, just Thanksgiving where we go to massive parks. Everyone brings food to pass. The one thing I love about Orlando is no matter what type of school you're going for, you can either change school, pay for private school, or even if you choose to homeschool your kids, like there's actually a lot of options in the area to support that. So a lot of people get concerned like Cameron, the schools just don't look that great. And you're like, you're right, when you look at the greater Orlando area, they're not, you know, when you look at the public information, they're not generally rated that well. But that being said, it's not gone, right? It's not out of the options. Like there are a lot of options for you as a parent. Like I got 3 boys. We just have 1 in school right now. The other second's gonna be starting next year. And I can tell you that there's a lot of options out here. So even if you're not looking to homeschool and you're like, Cameron, there's no way I can do that. I need a break. I get it. There's a lot of options. So even though it might not fit your bill right now, you gotta dig deeper. Because don't forget, even though the information might give you a letter grade, you kind of gotta dig in more. As always, like call the school. If they have an open house, obviously if it's during the summer and you can get a chance to get into the school, ask questions, maybe meet some of the teachers. And unfortunately, you're gonna have to put work in. One thing we learned moving to the area is a lot of schools will not answer your calls back. There are so many people moving here that they just don't answer back. Some do. And I can tell you it's just something you're gonna have to deal with, unfortunately. But there are options, do not worry. Just understand that if you are looking to move, the schooling thing, if that's important, and if you have kids, the sooner you start it, the better. I cannot recommend you start that soon enough to make sure it's not something you're stressing about last minute, because it'll bite you in the butt. All right, traffic and transportation. Overall, this is gonna be pretty short. Traffic, it can get crazy. Kissimmee is just, like I said, that vacation capital, right? It is true. So traffic during peak travel seasons during the winter can be absolutely insane. So depending where you're trying to live and where you're trying to travel for work or what you're trying to do, it can get crowded. Now, heading to Disney World isn't the worst, even though it can be, especially during peak times. That can still, your drive can be terrible. I don't think it's as bad as the I-4, just my opinion, but it's not that great. So being Kissimmee, if you're trying to avoid some of the craziness, you're not going to. I mean, being the vacation capital, you're gonna have a lot of craziness when it comes to traffic. And if you're looking for public transportation, it's not that great. Not compared to a lot of other cities in the United States. So keep that in mind when it comes to the area. Now, people in community, we've talked about this before. I think there are a lot of great people. When people go to Orlando, I have heard so many mixed bags. Some people find people that are like good people. Other people are like, this is the most rudest place I've ever seen in existence. I'll tell you this. If you're looking for good communities, I have never seen so many different types of people with communities you can get involved in. And not so much in like demographic, right? Just like homeschooling groups. I feel like no matter what sport you like, there tends like, even if you're an adult trying to play sports, like I've never seen an area that has heavy communities like this. Like you're gonna find groups and events and things going on that you can get a part of, even if it's only one city over, maybe not in Kissimmee. So I think the people are great. But at the same time, you get a lot of people who don't live here. And you get a lot of people who tend to be rude when they vacation here, because I don't know, that's just what people do. Like I grew up in New York, not in the city, but I grew up in New York. Hey, New Yorkers got some attitude, especially in New Jersey. They come down here, they like to share that a little bit. What's cool is the people that are actually living here permanently, honestly, most of them are awesome. I've gotten tons of free furniture, I've gotten tons of support, and we've actually made some great friends that I never thought I'd find where we came from before. So overall, I think it's a huge plus. Just understand, you're gonna have to put in the work. You're gonna have to build that community, especially if you don't have any family here like we didn't when we moved here. Now, wrapping it all up, should you live here? I don't know. I can tell you this is all a general information when it comes to moving to Kissimmee. It has its pros, its cons, and you have to weigh them for yourself. But if you're looking to get help in that decision, maybe ask specific questions relative to you. I've made a lot of mistakes when we moved here. A lot of people on our team have made mistakes when moving here. Reach out to this number down below, call, text, email, it doesn't matter. Let's have a conversation, let's sit down, let's figure out where are you coming from, what are you trying to do, and we can point you almost exactly to the right area you should be looking at. I promise you, we do this every single month, many, many times over, and it's something that we are very passionate about, and me especially. So reach out, let's have that conversation, because I can be honest with you, while these videos are great on YouTube, and I love helping you when it comes to relocating here, ultimately we all have specific situations, and it's too hard to just be so specific on YouTube videos, and I really wish I could, but unfortunately we all have different needs and wants when it comes to moving to the Orlando and especially Kissimmee in general. So let me know down in the comments below, reach out, let's have that conversation. I hope you got value in this video. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.